Hey, welcome to Caching in the Northwest. You know, this is the podcast from the birthplace of geocaching right here in the great Pacific Northwest. Now, it's Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific, and they call me Chris of the Northwest. And we're going to talk about geocaches and geocachers from here and all around the globe. So while you still have hope for your baseball team, we'll be caching in the Northwest.
Nope. Already given up hope.
Oh, well, that didn't take long.
Yep. It's tradition.
Okay. Well, you know, that's what baseball's all about.
That's right. Tonight, though, we're talking about how far south the LANMonkey has gone. Yeah. Live audience, tell us what you think about LANMonkey going south. We want to hear from you. The chat's rolling already. I see it. First, of course, we have to bring in our Brazilian bush babies. Some say he calls the Amish for tech support. And others say Mrs. LANMonkey is the greatest cacher of all time. Worth far more than rubies. Husband has full confidence in her. All we know is he's called LANMonkey.
I was just waiting to see if someone was going to speak in on my behalf. All right. Yes, absolutely.
Nope, not a word.
Not a word. Okay. Great to be back. And those astute amongst our viewers, those who are listening on the audio haven't maybe figured this out yet, but the astute amongst our viewers will have figured out that Mrs. LANMonkey is joining us tonight. A very rare Mrs. LANMonkey sighting. Mm-hmm. And we are very much looking forward to sharing about, UDAC. She is.
This is a goat. Yes.
Greatest of all time. Absolutely. There you go. Komakino. Hey, Komakino, I am in the middle of editing our collab from Ballard. So I am looking forward to sharing that. Anyhow, before we jump into anything else, let's just shout out a quick reminder of how much we appreciate the support of our patrons. We'll help to keep this podcast coming each and every week. A thanks to Land Sharks. They are one of our corporate Denali level sponsors. And right now, Sharks Geocacher and Sharks Coin mystery bags are on sale. Check it all out at Landsharks, LANDSHARKZ.ca. And our other corporate Denali level sponsor, well, that's Explore Gold Country. Learn more about the Geo Tours, learn more about the region. Don't forget to download the app, plan your trip at exploregoldcountry.com.
I love it.
And if you, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. If, dear listener, you would like to know more about how to support this show and all the hard work that Chris does half an hour before every podcast. Nothing
else. Nothing else.
Not true at all. You can click that Patreon link. It's right over there on the cachingnw.com website.
It is fun to have that sheer panic 24 minutes before the podcast starts and you realize my audio doesn't work. Yeah. No problem. It's good for the heart.
It also is tradition.
Yes. Oh, it's such a night of tradition. In fact, we want to continue with our tradition of using hashtags in the conversation so you guys can join in on this conversation tonight with all of us during our conversation. So if you had a question, use the hashtag penguins or penguin wing. Penguin. That's it.
Bonus points for who mispronounced penguin in the documentary.
I'm sorry, I had trouble mispronouncing his mispronunciation.
Yeah. Pinwing, I think he said. I don't know. Anyway.
It's penguins.
Yes.
For tonight's show. And of course, use the hashtag FATAS if you want to talk about anything in the after show. You know, that's open for free game. There we could talk even about walruses.
Oh.
Because I've heard somebody here is the walrus. And I still don't understand what that means.
Goo goo goo.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But
who's the Eggman?
They are the Eggmen.
I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, How about a little bit of news? Would that make
Okay.
sense to you?
Maybe.
News. Let's jump into some news. How about talking about games in the news? There's a game called GeoGuessr. It's an interactive geography game that transports players to random locations around the world in a virtual sense using Google Street View. The description says, just like geocaching, players must employ their navigation and deduction skills, aka geosenses, when guessing the precise location. The more accurately a player guesses, the more points they earn. Geocachers even earn a limited edition souvenir.
Ooh. I have a question.
Those is popular.
Is it truly geosenses in this case? Since you're only using one sense, you can't use your ears, your touch. I suppose you could taste the monitor to see if it, the geocache popped out to you, but
Suppose you could, but I don't think it would help.
okay.
There you go.
Let's see. From secluded mountain panoramas to bustling city centers, the geocaching challenge features 10 places inspired by real-world geocaching locations, and it's free to participate. As you play, you might recognize some familiar landmarks. It's important to note that the geocaching challenge does not involve real-life geocaching. Instead, our goal is to highlight memorable locations, invite new explorers to our global community, and most importantly, inspire future outdoor adventure. So, I know you're just on the edge of your seat trying to figure out how to earn this limited edition souvenir.
Oh, do tell.
Here's what you need to do. Play the geocaching challenge between March 26th and April 12th and correctly identify at least one location. Then you must find the hidden tracking code on the completion message screen and then discover the code at geocaching.com before April 12th, 2024 to earn a special souvenir. So if you're a little behind in your podcast listening and you're hearing us on April 15th, file your taxes, but you're too late for the souvenir. If you couldn't find a hidden tracking code, don't worry. A second tracking code will appear at the end of the game after guessing all 10 locations. Discover either tracking code will earn the souvenir. So there you go. A couple ways to get the souvenir.
2 tracking codes, 1 souvenir. Either tracking code will get you the souvenir. If you want all the things, you have to play the complete 10-stop game. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Komakino said he made it through 5 stages of that and stopped.
Did you discover the code?
Don't
Most
know,
likely.
but monitor
5
looking is not advised.
Yeah. Yeah, the schnozberries taste like schnozberries.
UDAC wants to know who got the second tracking code.
I found it.
I haven't had time yet. I just heard about it like 12 seconds ago.
Come on, chop. Jim, pause the podcast like we tell our listeners. Fun.
Hey, folks, tonight we want to talk about this Landsharks cruise that went to Antarctica. That's where, the uncles are up north, the ants are down south.
That's it.
No, it's where ants come from. Like creepy crawly ants.
Really?
Yeah.
Really
Wow.
cold ones.
Just the cold ones, yeah.
Oh, the one in the ice cube. I got it.
Yeah.
I think maybe the first thing is there Uncle Arctica? Yeah, there should be. Maybe the first thing to address about this is, and I know it referred to as a cruise, and many of the Landsharks adventures, the trips we've been on previously and other listeners have been on, have been cruises in the sense of a traditional cruise. This is very much not a cruise in the sense of a traditional cruise. We'll talk, I'm sure, in other details, but it's you are not on a 3,000, 4,000 passenger cruise ship. You're on a 200 to 300 passenger research ship that also takes cruise passengers. So,
interesting.
A very different experience, but we'll talk about some more. But I just wanted to kind of point that out off the start because, there's always the impression of, oh, you went on this big ship to Antarctica, and we went on a small ship to Antarctica.
Very good. Now, how long was the trip overall? Did you do any, anything before and or after?
Well, I'm just going to keep talking, so I'm going to let Laura talk.
He's going to sneak through the whole episode.
All right, he's going to try.
I could just sit here and smile for the whole evening. Yes, we were down. I I don't know the exact dates, but I'm sure we started off in Buenos Aires for about a week and did some excursions. Well, visited the city, but I know one of the days that we were there, we actually took their ferry over to Uruguay and spent the day over there, where we were eaten alive by mosquitoes. But
You can do that in British Columbia.
well, that was the worst out of the whole trip, was Uruguay for mosquitoes.
Very expensive mosquito bites.
I don't know why, but
They're not allowed to come back across the border.
but
Tough
so
immigration.
so we kind of just toured around in that area before we headed off for the cruise, and then I would say we had about 2 weeks that entailed our cruise with Hurtigruten. And then once that ended, then we spent it one more week visiting a few more locations, one of which was Iguazu Falls. And then we headed to Sao Paulo to catch a bus to take us to the Intervalo State Park to get the Brazil ape cache. And then we came home. So that's kind of
on that same bus,
condensed version.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, it was a big trip. It was a busy trip. It was definitely not a sit on the beach and relax trip.
No, I was tired.
That's okay. That was the point, right? Is to get to all these different places. We were away from home for a month,
wow,
which is the longest we've ever been away on a trip.
Yeah.
But it was also nice to come home.
And to go, I think, well, of course, you take a couple flights from here to start off the whole trip, but we counted up 9 flights
wow,
for our whole trip. And a couple of those were getting up kind of like at 2 or 3 in the morning to get downstairs to make sure you get the bus to get to the airport and catch in. So
wow.
No time to rest.
No rest for the wicked.
No.
So, okay, let's talk about Buenos Aires. I mean, we see pictures of it. What struck you the most while you were there?
Jay, step in.
Well,
anybody at this point, anybody in the chat want to speak out about Buenos Aires?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. In fact, I'd love to entertain any questions about the trip that come from the chat. But I mean, it's a big city, right? So you get that same kind of big city vibe you get anywhere else, but you're also, recognizing you're in South America, and there's some very unique things about being there. The food was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What struck me that was really funny is I knew that one of the things I was looking forward to trying when we were there were empanadas, and that's like a very popular street food kind of thing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to snarfing down some empanadas and kind of just getting into the vibe of this. And on our bus ride from when we first arrived from the airport in Buenos Aires to our hotel, our tour guide there, we were asking her some questions, and one of the people asked her, like, well, what are some of like must try foods? And I was waiting for like empanadas, and then like, what else? She says pizza. And I'm like, what? She's like, no. It's not like your pizza in North America, and it's not like the pizza in Italy. And then so she's explaining like this, the very strong cultural influence from Italy to Buenos Aires. Apparently there's a very large Italian population in Buenos Aires, which I found interesting. So we did try pizza at a couple different places. One was a wood-fired pizza place, and that was pretty good. And it had like, a little bit unusual toppings. Mrs. Monkey wasn't super keen on it because the one I ordered was a little on the salty side. Not like bad language, but like.
Did you get LANMonkey? Oh, go ahead.
Did you get the chilled monkey brains?
No, we didn't do monkey brains.
No, it's just he liked it. He liked different toppings, and
yeah,
I probably would have done something else.
It was prosciutto and tomato and something else. but on top of the pizza. But the prosciutto was pretty salty, and so. But it was different, right? It was a different kind of pizza. It certainly wasn't Domino's. Not dissing Domino's, but it was a different experience. But
when you travel, you don't need Domino's,
right? Although when you travel, there's always a McDonald's, which is always hilarious, right?
And a Kentucky Fried Chicken somehow.
Sorry?
And a Kentucky Fried Chicken somehow.
You know, that's the one thing I didn't see was a Kentucky Fried Chicken, but what they had was Kentucky pizza, which was funny.
Yep. Who knew?
Little bluegrass and bourbon. What did they put on there?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was a really neat city. One of the things we did, I saw the comment from Subway Mark about crying in Argentina. However, we did go to the cemetery where the Ms. Perón is buried, and that was so. There's an adventure lab with a bonus cache in that cemetery, and when I heard cemetery and we were traveling to go and we walked to it and we were on our way to it, I'm thinking in my head, cemetery like most of our cemeteries here in North America, like big grassy headstones, not. It's like if you've ever been in like New Orleans and you go to some of this where it's all
above ground.
Yeah,
Mausoleum.
I thought it was like the movie, like Double Jeopardy, when they're walking around. That's exactly what it looks like.
But fascinating, and like every mausoleum is unique and different, and like different architecture to it and everything. So that was quite fascinating. There was a number of.
It's interesting. I wonder if that has to do with the geology of the area. That they have a very low water table. They don't, or the philosophy of the people that they don't bury their dead.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But some of them are like multi-tiered, like apparently like levels in them with like, and there's like a glass front and you can see the stairs going down. It's just super unusual. Very neat.
Well, now you've made people hungry. Carlos, his empanadas would be good for podcast baking. I want some now.
I was totally grooving on empanadas and the 1 liter beers. You get a 1 liter beer.
Oh yeah, they were very big beers.
I didn't need to leave.
But one of the things that Jay wanted to see or that he had read about, we were so disappointed because one of their artworks that they have in their park is this great big mechanical flower. It's shaped like petals.
Yeah.
And a certain time in the morning, the thing opens up. And then in the evening, it closes back up.
And when Laura says great big, like it is the size of a house. It's
big.
Huge.
It's very, very big. We're not talking, yeah. But I think it was about a month or two before we got down there. They had their worst, I guess, storm that came through, and the wind was so bad that it actually damaged it tore the petals, so we couldn't watch it open and close, which we were looking forward to, but I mean we still got to see it, but we didn't get to see it do its actual thing.
We didn't, sorry. One of the other things that I did want to see was one of the most unique bookstores I've ever been to. We did get to that, and that was quite fascinating. It was an old opera theater that has been converted into a bookstore. Yes, that's the photo right there. Thank you, Chris.
Got it.
So it kind of right now looks like that, except the lowest petal is broken and laying on the ground.
No, bummer.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it looked almost exactly like that, and I do have some photos that I'll be sharing later. But the bookstore was amazing because basically the opera house looks exactly as it would have looked when it was an opera house, except now it's just filled with bookshelves and they're selling books. And it was amazing to walk around. And then the stage where the performers would be is now a coffee shop.
Yep.
It was
so it looks like a little cafe, so the people are sitting up there at tables and having a cup of coffee.
No way.
I'm going to be right back. I just got to step away for a sec.
Fantastic. Now, Mrs. LANMonkey, we're putting you on the spot. Your tortured day in Uruguay.
I was going to say, tell us what Mr. LANMonkey doesn't. Oh, never mind.
Oh, no, that was interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I figured we're actually just carry the show at this point.
Tell us about your quick trip into Uruguay.
Uruguay. Okay. Well, when the ferry comes in, it kind of puts you right into an old historic area. Now, I'm not going to remember everything, but that's unfortunately it's old.
It was the blood loss, right?
Yes. There were a lot of mosquitoes. They say it's the worst they had seen in about 20 years. But there was one cache that we tried to go for. And, I think you took 1 or 2 steps into the grass and it was just kind of a boosh. And we had one fellow, Malcolm, who is a muggle. His wife caches and he just kind of comes along for the ride. He was such a good sport. He was the one who decided, no, it has to be there, and plowed in to look for this thing. And I tell you, I kind of said that the mosquitoes that swarmed us, and especially him, he looked like a pig pen off of the Peanuts. It was unreal. Even when we sat in one of the places for lunch in the afternoon, they came out with a bottle of off or spray and set it on the table for us to, because it was just so bad. But out of our whole trip, I expected that I would be bitten more when we went to Brazil for the ape cache, and nope. It was Uruguay. Even I think the mosquitoes were bad in Buenos Aires when we first landed there as well. But that Uruguay was the worst. I'm sure it's not usually like that, but it was a very unique. Would you call it a town, Jay? It was just a small old piece of.
Yeah. So where we went, and our California listeners can appreciate this. It was called Colonia del Sacramento. And it's an old keep, and it was quite interesting. The history on it that we learned is that it had been held alternatingly by the Spanish and the Portuguese. It kept going back and forth depending on who happened to be, because it's located at. Okay, so Argentina, Uruguay are separated by this crazy huge river, and it's like a huge lake. The delta of the river is so big at that point, and that's the ferry Laura was talking about that we took. But the Colonia del Sacramento is at a very strategic, tactical point where they would be able to defend just on a peninsula, defend that part of Uruguay from any ships coming in. So it kept flipping back and forth as to who held that over time. But yeah, there's a couple of geocaches to find there, an earth cache, a virtual 2 traditionals, I think. Yeah, 2 traditionals.
Yeah, I think there's 2.
The mosquito one, and then the other one in the old wall.
The mosquito one, yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, just a really, again, and this is the thing, like when you're in. So yeah, so there's.
Sorry, I'm a little slow on the uptake on images tonight, but there you go. There's a map of Argentina. So if you're looking, you see the word Argentina just above that is Buenos Aires. That's cutting through those words of Buenos Aires are cutting through the country of Uruguay.
Yeah,
exactly. So we spent some time there, and then we also did a river tour on the Tigre Delta, which is on that same river, but further up the river. It's just a mass of islands, and they're where people have their cottages, their resort cottages. It was quite fascinating. So we really enjoyed a day touring that river and then visiting a market. It was wonderful. And then And then from that point, really, it was the flight down to Ushuaia in Patagonia. which is basically as far south in Argentina as you can go. And that's where we got on board the ship.
Okay. And now this isn't a large ship. This is a small research. Is it an active research vessel that happens to be taking passengers?
So that's the interesting thing, is that these ships are designed as both a passenger ship and a research ship. So the Hurtigruten company actually does hire dedicated researchers. So there was a geologist on board, there was a glaciologist on board, there were some marine biologists on board. There's just a variety of people who part of their time was spent doing research. And so they would have research projects that they're contributing to. And then the other part of their time is being our expedition leaders for the guests.
Oh, nice.
And
I was going to ask if you had time to talk with them.
We absolutely did. They would host seminars very frequently, especially on a sea day. Your calendar could be filled up very easily with interesting seminars about seals and whales and obviously birds of all different types, including penguins and just lots of things. Yeah, very cool. Laura, what struck you about that?
About what, the lectures?
Well, no, just about the well, I was just going to say the crew, but the research team, the ship.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just like the fact that I think they had commented later on in the trip that they were thankful that they didn't have to be a generalist. So they didn't have to know everybody else's stuff. They could stick with the stuff that they knew and go with that. Now, Jay calls them seminars. You could call them lectures. You know, if you tell me that sounds very boring, but they actually made them fun. So I don't think anything was over 45 minutes long, and they all had a sense of humor. So they always threw some jokes and stuff in there. So it wasn't just dry, here's the facts, this is what this is, kind of. So they made it a lot of fun. So I think that part is different than just having somebody who's just spitting out the same information over and over again and is bored with their job. So you could clearly tell that they loved what they were doing. There was one story that we had on there that we heard that we thought was quite funny later. And the one guy actually brought it up later and said, yep, I made a mistake. He was, I guess they text one another to say, oh, we see whales over here. We see this over there. And one of the fellows on the ship, his name is Oscar. And when he took a look at the comments, he thought somebody had said they had seen orca whales, when really it was just, we've seen whales, but he saw Oscar's name and thought it was orca. And there was a lot of people who were super, super excited about seeing orca whales. It wasn't. Anyways, it was funny to us. And he brought that up. And so they are very good at poking fun at each other as well. But I don't know. It was a good crew that really seemed to mesh well. And seeing that with them, of course, makes it fun for everybody else on board, too. It was just very personable. And I think when there's not 2,000 people that they have to interact with, it makes it easier to have a little bit more of a one-on-one, because you would see them maybe more frequently than you would on a big ship. So
I have to ask, were the Oscar whales black and white like the orcas we know, or was it something
they look surprisingly like humpbacks?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, apparently, as we didn't know, well, maybe I didn't know, that there are orca whales that run in Antarctica, or
well, actually they swim.
Okay.
Just over land they run.
But it's just
Get
the
back in the water.
different pods that run, I guess, south of the equator and just do the run on the lower part, just like we have some in the upper, which who knew? I didn't.
I didn't either. I don't really know the migratory patterns of orcas, even though they're, we have an island named after them up here.
That's right.
No, it's not.
Southern hemisphere, they swim upside down, I hear.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And backwards.
Yeah.
Counterclockwise.
Swirl in the other direction, sure. So you say this wasn't a full cruise ship, but yet it had cruise or passenger type facilities. So you still had like the Lido deck, the open cocktail bar, dinner with the captain, and Gopher to the Art Doc and what's her name? No,
Yeah, Julie,
the cruise director, right? You still had them.
No, but we had Gopher. So
okay.
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't a Love Boat.
I mean, I've never been on a cruise ship of any kind, so I have no idea what to compare it to. But
I mean, it was, so it had very nice, well-appointed rooms for everybody. There are no, so if people have been on big cruise ships before, often there's kind of like three different types of room. There's a balcony room, there's a window room, and then there's an interior room. And really, you have on this ship, you have window rooms or balcony rooms. There are no interior rooms. So everybody has at least a window. We were on a lower deck. We were on deck 4. There was only 8 passenger decks. We were on deck 4, and we had a window, and it was kind of neat because it was just above the water level a little bit, so you had kind of this really cool view, especially going through the Drake Passage. But there was food services, so 3 restaurants, I guess you'd call it, sort of the main buffet where most people ate, and then more of a boutique restaurant, and then kind of more of almost like a burger and beer joint restaurant. So that was, it's pretty good. You've definitely got options for what you want to eat. I think I don't know. What did you like most about the accommodations, Laura? What struck you?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
Did you like the heated floors?
Oh, okay. Yeah. The bathrooms had heated floors.
Nice.
So of course, when we came back, if you had things that were wet, you just laid them on the floor in there, and it was quite warm. They'd be probably dry in a couple hours.
Nice.
Really nice.
Well, and maybe that's a good point, right? Because I think we're talking about your cruising, and we went to Antarctica, but I think what we haven't pointed out is that, again, because this is an expedition ship, a research ship, yes, you're cruising to Antarctica, but then you are going ashore in Antarctica, and so I'll pause the or for a second. We had 5 different locations we're going to visit, and this is one of the other things, is that for every location, there's like a plan A, but there's also a plan B and a plan C, because everything is weather dependent. But so the night before they'll say, okay, plan A is we're going here and we're going to do this. But and every evening they're like, but it might not happen. And so they're always managing expectations, which was kind of fun. Most of the time it was plan A. There was a few times we had to go with plan B. But basically the ship, which is also pretty cool. You were asking about the ship, Jim. And one of the other cool things is that it's a hybrid ship. So it has diesel engines, but the diesel engines power generators that power up the batteries that actually run the props. And
sounds like a locomotive.
Yeah, and the props are exactly like that. And the props are in these antipods on the front and the back of the ship that can swivel 360 degrees. So the ship could pull into a little Antarctic bay, not drop an anchor, not touching the bottom of the sea, and just hover, just stay absolutely stationary and quiet. It was quite fascinating how we could do that. And then basically on the sides of the ship are wet docks that open up, and then they pull the zodiacs out, and you basically in every how hard was I'll tell you, Cliff.
Cliff wants to know how hard was it to get to shore.
Yeah. Well, Laura, do you want to talk about the in and out of the zodiacs? And
well, I don't know. To start off, when you did go ashore, one of the things that they were concerned about was spreading the bird avian flu to. They want to make sure that there aren't any sick there when we first got there, but they also want to make sure we're not bringing anything. So even when we first start, we had to bring all of our jackets and coats and things that we would be wearing to the shore down to one of the decks where they'd actually vacuum your clothes for you. And more like they were more concerned around your zippers and pockets and stuff of anything that you might possibly have in there that, would have fallen in from somewhere else. But, and then when it was time to go, they also supplied, muck boots. They kind of, the kind that come right up to your knees. The top portion, what do you call it? Neoprene kind of thing. But so they provided the boots, and that's what you wore the whole week when you were getting on and off the boat. But you'd have to step in these trays to kind of disinfect your boots.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd climb into the Zodiac, and it took about, I think, maybe 10 of us at a time, 10 or 12. And come to shore. And I would say every time you got to shore, you were like climbing out of the boat and into the water. So you were usually, up to your ankles or higher, and treading onto shore. And then at that point, it was the don't crouch, don't bend over, don't touch anything. So like if there's rocks beside you, don't put your hand out for balance. You're kind of, they did have hiking poles that you could use, but at that point it was don't rest, don't put them down on the ground. If you have to set them down, it was to stab them into the ice. And so you were not allowed to touch anything. The only thing that would touch is your boots, is your feet, and that's it. And then once you were done, back into the boat, back to the ship, and then you'd kind of go back through the process again of back through these, except I think they had a boot wash is what they call it. Now, it's like a car wash. You stand there, it scrubs the bottom of your boots, but it's also swishing the whole sides, and you push the little button. I mean, it's quite forceful that you don't have your feet on. It's almost pushing you out the back, and then you step through more stuff to disinfect your boots and then back upstairs. But and you'd be doing that pretty much twice a day, because once was a landing and the other one would be an excursion, well, kind of more that where they just take you out boating to look at things from the Zodiac. So
how long would that process take from the time you came down on deck before you got on the Zodiac? Are we talking 10 minutes or are we talking 30?
They moved pretty fast. They
moved
were very
fast.
efficient at getting but you would come down to the ship, the wet dock in the ship. You would come down all geared up. So
and you were in groups. So they had the whole boat split up into different groups. And so the night before, you'd kind of have your schedule as to this is the time that you're slated for coming down to get on the boat. And then the same thing for the afternoon. They kind of swap the groups up, and the next day they would kind of shift the groups around in a different order. So you weren't always the first group off in the morning, and you weren't always the last group to go at the end of the day, kind of thing. So It was a nice mix.
Yeah, it was done really well. But back to the comment about the heated floors in the bathrooms, you're sitting on the side of a Zodiac in the Arctic, or the Antarctic, I should say. And the water doesn't always look like the water behind Mrs. Monkey.
No, this was the very, very,
That was an unusual day that it was calm like glass. Most of the time, you would get out of the Zodiac and your clothes are wet. So we had and most people had pretty good clothes that they had brought with them. They supplied you with a jacket that you get to keep. So we have our red and yellow jackets that we're very pleased with, because the jackets were highly waterproof and did a great job of keeping the salt water off of you. Your stuff would be wet when you get back to the ship. So that heated floor in the bathroom is great. As Laura said, you just lay everything out on the heated floor, and a few hours later,
the bottom of my pants were wet every time, but I had them on the outside of my boots. So of course, every single time you stepped out and into the water, they were wet. But they would be dry by the next morning to go out for the next excursion. But I think there was 2 days, especially the last day, where the water was extremely choppy, and it was an interesting exit from the Zodiac back onto the ship. We were the last group, we were the last boat, and it was pretty rough that when we got back to the ship, they were like, don't move until we tell you. And then because the boat would just, it would go up and then it would drop way down. So if you had to step off, if you didn't get the timing right, well, you'd probably be
going for a swim.
You'd be going for a swim. Wow. But the ride back to the boat, the water was spraying everywhere. And I think that was the first time that I like, yep, my butt's wet this time from just sitting there. There was so much water coming over that it was like, yeah, I'm really wet.
So I guess the moral of the story is like, it's not like a princess cruise, right? It's not like your typical, big ship cruise. You've got to be prepared that you're getting out there and really having some adventures.
Still sounds like a pretty big vessel. I mean,
it's still a large.
I mean, I'm used to Washington State ferries with like 2 whole passenger decks, and you say, oh, well, this one only had 8 passenger decks. Like,
right.
Well, good grief.
Well, I mean, they had, so I shouldn't say 8 passengers. They had 8 decks.
They weren't all passenger.
They weren't all passenger decks.
Okay.
So the bottom 3 decks are like, the engine room and all that kind of stuff. We were on the first passenger deck at deck 4. Deck 5 was a passenger deck. Deck 6 was restaurants and research labs. Deck 7 and 8.
Those naturally go together.
Yeah.
Well, food at one end.
Research on the front.
At the other. Yeah.
And the research was cool because they actually had they had a classroom right up at the bow, which is where they would do the seminars or the lectures. And then they had kind of like on one side of the ship, they had a couple of breakout rooms where they had all kinds of cool examples of fish and animals and rocks and everything to check out. And the other side was like a lab with set up with tables with microscopes where you could actually take a look at samples that were brought back onto the ship from different scientific excursions. So that was really cool. So like there was active research and science going on, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But
we have a request. Apparently, the travel is not important. People want to know about penguins.
There was a lot of penguins. So we saw definitely 4, possibly 5 different species of penguins.
They taste like chicken.
Somebody was asking
which restaurant you go to
earlier tonight. Somebody was asking me and said, "What were the penguins like?" And I said they tasted great. But
in a light butter sauce, they were delicious.
Yes, good old butter penguin.
They're very smelly.
They are smelly.
Most wild animals are.
You know when you're coming upon a penguin colony. They eat and excrete krill.
Swim away.
We saw lots of seals, which was pretty cool, especially even when we were out in the Zodiac. The first Zodiac excursion, we had seals swimming around the Zodiac trying to check us out and everything. That was pretty amazing.
Nice.
Another group had humpback whales come up right beside their Zodiac, which would have been amazing.
Amazing and somewhat terrifying.
It's a little terrifying.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to go kayaking, so we did that. One day, Laura and I were out with a group. They had a few groups that went out and did some kayaking. And you could, when you're out kayaking or even on the Zodiac excursions, you go past the penguin colonies and, solo penguins just sitting on a small iceberg looking at you like, what are you doing? Which is pretty cool.
You were allowed to get within, I think, about, was it 5 meters of the penguins? I don't know what that is in feet. Sorry.
That's polar distancing.
But I, in a way, I was surprised that we were even allowed to get that close to them. So, and most of them, they don't seem too bothered by you. They just kind of like,
whatever.
So they kind of continue along with what they're doing. But
yeah, I know. Sorry, I noticed a few geocaching related.
I was just going to say, I think when he said penguin talk, he was talking about penguin hashtag. Like, how many new country souvenirs did you get on this hashtag penguin trip?
Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, Antarctica, Falkland Islands.
6. That sounds.
I guess 6.
No, well done. That was Iham, by the way, that asked that.
Thank you, Iham.
And
then the rest of the group who continued on would have gotten Chile, Peru, and I'm not sure what else they were getting, but yeah.
Well, and since
Peru wasn't warm, it was chilly.
Yeah.
Chili, Peru.
Chili con carne.
Oh.
Let's see. And Starcacher says, as long as we're talking about Antarctica, what cache types were you able to log on the Antarctic part of the trip?
Well, definitely Earth caches. There were a couple adventure labs that were there. We did manage to do one traditional cache, which was at the Port Lockroy station. I think it's closed to closed to passengers at this point. I can't remember what the reasoning was for it, but we were able to have them come aboard our ship with their little store, and they brought the cache with them. So
wow.
we do have a picture with us with the cache, and everybody signed in. And I think even somebody else on another cruise ship lucked into that. I think about a week behind us, because they commented how the cache had been refreshened from our group. So.
You mean Jay got another hat?
I did.
He did. Yeah, that's what
Amazing.
he was pointing at.
Yeah, I never would have imagined he got a hat.
Yeah,
bizarre, right?
shocker, right?
Yeah.
But and then
there's also a couple of virtuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's about all you could do. I think.
Yeah, there was only the one traditional, and again, a reminder, just like from a geography perspective, where we were was the Antarctic Peninsula. So if you look at a map of Antarctica and you kind of follow South America down to its point, and then you just keep going south, well, there's a point that comes out of Antarctica where the continents used to meet, tectonically speaking. And we went fairly far down on the Antarctic Peninsula, almost to the Antarctic Circle, and then started working our way back up the Antarctic Peninsula.
So you didn't visit McMurdo Station?
We did not visit McMurdo, but we did visit a few stations. Yeah, so there you go. There's a great map. Thanks, Chris. So that peninsula over on the left side of the map there is where we were. Yeah, it looks kind of funny looking at it this way.
Yeah, I was thinking, or I looked at a bunch of them, and they're all oriented different ways.
Yeah. This makes it, this looks a little different than what we became accustomed to seeing, but fair enough. But it's amazing because that peninsula has islands like just all over it and icebergs floating everywhere. And so, that's one thing that the navigational and skipper, the captain and well, the crew driving the ship and navigating the ship were phenomenal. The way they could navigate through, and even going into Deception Island, which is not extinct, it's a dormant volcano caldera, and you have to go through a fairly narrow passage. They had 100 meters to navigate through with that ship, and just threaded the needle with it. It was amazing.
If you're confused about the way the map, this is the one I've always found to be the most helpful. So basically everything is north,
except right in the middle,
except the South Pole.
Pole itself.
Yeah.
True. That's funny.
Yeah, that's north. We're going north from here.
Yeah, this is also north.
It's
north.
certainly not a trip that you could go down though and say, well, I'm going to do this earth cache and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, because you have no idea where the boat is going to go, especially when plan A doesn't work. So we were sailing past some other earth caches that were like way over in another direction. And it's quite possible that if the weather was crappy where we were, maybe they would have headed that direction. But I know there's
You
other
didn't sign up for that shore excursion then.
No, I know there's other traditionals down there. I don't know how you get to them, or if that's just a different ship.
I think
that
the other
maybe
ones
goes
are
in,
at
but
research stations as well.
Yeah.
You have to have specifically gone to those research stations.
Yeah.
You didn't bring Timbits to bribe the captain with?
They didn't make
no,
it.
we were lucky enough with the one for Port Lockroy. There was a lot of work that went into the, could this happen? So
And a lot of kudos to Helen from Landsharks, who spent quite a bit of time and effort prior to the trip contacting the administration at the Port Lockroy station to ensure that the cache came on board, talking to the cache owner. She did significant cache maintenance on the cache. It really needed some maintenance. And so she had brought all the spare bits and parts and and refreshed it, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
And do the researchers on the ship know about caching now?
You know what's interesting? So
thanks, UDAC, for the question, by the way.
yeah, thank you, UDAC. This is not going to be a terrible shock to anybody, but I placed an earth cache in Antarctica on the trip.
What?
But that is not as easy a thing as you might think. And
Are there glacial erratics down there?
no, it's still all in motion. They haven't settled yet. What was really cool is the shipboard geologist helped me put the earth cache together, and she already knew about earth caching.
I was going to say, you've got an inside source right there with you, stuck on a ship that they can't run away from you.
You can run away, yeah.
In a corner, awesome. Okay. We're talking.
I spent a lot of time chatting with her, and then I approached her with the idea. I said, I think we could, I would love to put an earth cache here. This is what I have as ideas. What do you think? And so we sat down for like half an hour, and she went through my notes, and she said, oh no, this is not quite right. Do this. And so I learned a lot. But it was actually it was published pretty quickly by the reviewer. Interestingly, the reviewer for Antarctica is in New Zealand.
Okay, that makes sense.
Fact, at least the Earth Cache reviewer, the Geo Aware. But yeah, it was published really quickly because not only was the geology very correct for Antarctica, but I was also able to say that this was reviewed and approved by shipboard geologist, and had her name in there because she was okay with that. So so that was a lot of fun. But some of them knew about geocaching already. Not everybody did. I don't know if everybody does, but then there's always a few in your group who are the evangelists. So I'm sure everybody's heard about it by now. There was other passengers. It was kind of neat. We
non-geocaching passengers?
Non-geocaching passengers.
Those poor souls.
Who had heard of geocaching before. And so they knew there was this group of geocachers on the ship. And if you happen we would sort of mix up who we were sitting with from time to time and sit with strangers who became friends. And there was at least a couple of different couples who were like, oh yeah, my friend geocaches, or I've heard of this geocaching. And that was a lot of fun.
That doesn't work that way for me. When I sit with strangers, they become more strange and leave.
They're looking at you askance. Why did you sit down beside me?
You should get them to sign up for a geocaching.com account, log just the Antarctica cache, and say, "Oh yeah, I only have one find. It's in Antarctica, but you know."
Yeah.
Well, guys, that sounds like a fantastic trip. I think we're going to save the encore at the end there. We'll save that for another upcoming show. But Mrs. LANMonkey, thank you so much for joining us. This was quite the treat.
Indeed.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for taking the time to tune in. We hoped you enjoyed this fresh, cool, refreshing episode of Caching in the Northwest.
Absolutely. I want to take a moment, as we always do at this point in the show, to thank Landsharks, LANDSHARKZ.ca, and Gold Country Geotourism. They are our corporate Denali level sponsors. Landsharks.ca is the outdoor adventure and geocaching store. Check them out online. And remember, they're shipping those online orders daily. And for absolutely amazing geocaching adventures, check out exploregoldcountry.com. And folks, we want to thank all of our faithful Denali level supporters. That's Landsharks, Gold Country Geotourism, Groovy Owl, Cool Cow Cachers, and Cachly, the geocaching app. If you want to know more about supporting this here podcast, well, click that Patreon link right over there on the cachingnw.com website.
Like Gas Station Tuna did.
And Acrodoc.
And Team Noltex.
MC3 Cats.
Geocaches.
Camp Clan.
Kev MacD.
Nervous Energies.
Al Robrick.
U-Talks Tours.
Sege Hove.
The patron saint of the glow, Dora Moore.
Seebeck Tribe.
B. Pendragon.
Limax.
CRS 98.
Subway Mark.
Wino Seattle.
Railroad.
BC Rockcrawler.
Nerve.
Geobirder.
Genies.
Skyhawker.
Kitty Quest.
Just Finding Our Way.
For all you spilly drinkers, Wet Coaster.
Boomer 365.
Flagman.
Antaeus.
You, Dak.
Green Words.
J. Car.
Whidbey Island Gal.
Mountain Bike.
DLG 9000.
Just Carlo.
Lugwork.
GSM Dams 2.
Ari 54321.
Peach of Washington.
Saw him tonight. Trexer.
Kid Vegas 19.
Korsgut.
Butterfly Girl.
And GeoNav Pro. Folks, thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. Your support helps keep the quality shows coming. So if you like the show, please click on the Patreon link on the cachingnw.com website. Now, if you didn't like the show, blame it on the cruise ship, well, the research ship, and tell us what you want us to talk about. And if you like the vibe, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a review. Now, if you were in a restaurant, you would tip. If you were in a live audience, you would clap. But since you're on a podcast, leave us a free, fast, fabulous, fantastic 5-star review. And of course, you can call into 253-693-TFTC and leave us a comment, ask a question, or send LANMonkey a penguin any time of the day or night. Live, mail them like Mr. Popper's penguins. Of course, you can email us at feedback@cachingnw.com. Join us every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific for a live show and chat. This show is produced by Chris Humphenauer, Jim Paulwoods, Jay Kennedy, and Brian Lang. It's licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Copyright 2024 by Chris Humphenauer. Folks, I ask you to stay tuned for
The After Show.
The After Show.
Hey, I was going to throw out there, if folks are interested in seeing more or hearing more or such about the trip, definitely follow us LANMonkeys on Instagram, Facebook, and our YouTube channel, because I will be getting to the YouTube videos. It's going to take a little bit, but as I tell people, I have at least 3 completely full SD cards of photos and video. So Lots and lots of content that we have started sharing and we'll continue to share. And absolutely, there you go.
Just Carlo just sent you a penguin.
Yeah, thank you, Carlo.
You can take that one home.
Oh, well, Mrs. Monkey already has one.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at that penguin.
That was so cute. Laura, tell the story about where that penguin's from.
Oh, it's one of the cachers that joined us for the trip. Her caching name, I believe, is Rambetta. She's from, oh shoot, I'm
We're
not
going to
going
get
to
it
say
wrong.
which state because I'm going to get it wrong. But she made these little penguins for every single person in the group. And so it says Antarctica swag. It's got the thing on there. And then, of course, she put the names on, whoops, I'm going the wrong way, of every caching person.
Wow.
And put
That
that
was amazing.
on there. And so she had those for everybody. So
Everybody
I think
has their own
we
personalized
gave her a
penguin.
hard time. Like, you packed all of those in your suitcase to bring. And she did, but
Yes, and I'm taking live ones home, so it's fine.
There you
yes.
go.
Yeah, that was neat though. Like, and there's a number of people who brought like swag stuff to just gift
Yeah.
to everybody else. There's about 33, 34 of us total on the Antarctic part of the trip, but that was pretty amazing. That people would think ahead and plan to do stuff like that. And I mean, my goodness, the effort that must have gone into stitching up those penguins for everybody. That's just amazing.
Nice. Let's see. We have a FATAS from CRS98 working out the details for an upcoming trip to New Mexico. Very much like Antarctica.
Yeah. Well,
Any
technically, both are
recommendations?
desert.
Yeah. And bring water in the form of ice if you can. So, any caching recommendations? He asked. If you have any ideas for him, go ahead and.
I don't think we've even cached in New Mexico yet, have we?
We have
Laura?
not.
We have not. Jim, have you cached in New Mexico?
I've not. I drove through New Mexico years before I was a geocacher.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, years before geocaching even existed. So,
Oh, wow. In the
As did I.
Okay, so none from the hosts.
nope.
No, we don't have any idea. I guess bring water because it tends to be desert-ish there. So,
Okay.
I hear you should have taken a left at Albuquerque.
That's it. When work, just tons of help for you. Maybe we'll do a New Mexico show.
Yeah.
Let's do a show from New Mexico.
Land of Enchantment, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Is that the state motto?
I think that's the motto. I could
Not
be wrong.
the enchantments. That's different.
Yeah, that's different. I could be wrong. The universe will correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, you better believe it. Well, I think that's all we have in FATAS right now.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that was great. Laura, thank you very much for coming and joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
People liked it. Oh, cute. And of course, penguin.
Yeah.
And of course, penguin.
Folks, thank you for taking the time to join us. And until next week, get out and get caching in the Northwest.